So let's begin. We are solving May 2024 paper 2-2. We have done the previous ones, October, November and May 25. Okay, very simple questions. I'm assuming all of you can answer these at this point. Okay, so always read the question properly, okay? And they're saying you have to use the insert document as well. So I'll open the insert document and they'll always tell you if you have to use multiple check marks. So that is the case here. So please keep that in mind. There is always at least one option when it's written. This is more of a hint. So this is a for loop here, and then for loop is always just simple iteration. There is no assignment column here, otherwise this would have qualified for an assignment as well. Then we have the write file, and we are writing this inside a file. So since we're writing, we're basically inputting into a file, so this should be input output. There is no if condition, there is no loop here. Then we have until level is greater than 25, so until is again iteration because it's a loop. And then there is if the value is greater than 74, if means selection, so we do that directly. And then there is a read file, so we are reading the data from a file, which is simply outputting it eventually on the screen. So this again qualifies as input output, and with this we get complete 4 marks. Then the second part is again involving the insert document, which is provided to you in the exam, so you don't have to like look for it or you don't have to memorize these questions. So pretty straightforward. There is a real number, and then you have to convert it into an integer number, and this is only one function that is allowed here. So just look for any function that will convert a real number into your integer, and the most basic option here could be int function. Here you'll pass in a value and it will return you some integer number. So I'll write int here. So this becomes int, and you're not going to write anything else. Okay, this is purely for your reference. X is set to real, returns integer, etc. You are not going to write any of this in the question statement, in the answer statement. This is just for reference. Okay, then we move on to the next part. That is, we have a function that uses 3 parameters. There are 3 values now. So whenever we have a string function that uses 3 values, you must remember there is only one function of that sort in the syllabus, and that is the mid function. And you can count it here yourself. There is a string in the mid, then there is a starting, and then there is the ending integer. So you just have to use the mid function here, and it will return you a character. Then we are starting with the real number, and then we have to apply 2 functions on this real number to actually convert this into a string. So this could be a bit tricky. So there are multiple ways of doing this. You can first convert this into an integer, and then you can use any of these functions. So you have some function called the chr, which takes an integer value and it returns a character, the ASCII character for this value. So you can either use this, or you can convert this number to a string and then just apply any function that keeps a string in the string format. And then there are multiple functions that do that, something like to upper or to lower. So I'll go with this approach. Okay, you can use any other alternative approach. So I'll first convert this number to a string, and then to make sure that the number remains a string, I'll just convert this into lowercase like this. So it remains a string because the question says that I have to convert this into a value that would be a string. And then you have my int, so we have a string, then that is followed by another value in the parameter. So there are only 2 functions that have such format, which is right and left. Left allows you this and right allows you this. So a string followed by a number. So you have to do this. Okay, now only right and left are allowed. Okay, so let's use any of these. Let's use left here. Okay, if you use left, it will return you ABC. Now we have to convert this ABC into an integer. So there is yes, Musa?
What does mid return you again?
What does mid do? Okay, moving on. So we are applying the left function on it, and then we have to apply another function in order to convert this string into an integer. So in order to do that, we can use multiple functions here, but the most simple one would be using the length function. So what happens is when I apply the length function on ABC, it simply converts it into 3, and this should be wrapped in quotation marks like this. All right. Okay. Then the question says, so I'm skipping this, is theoretical question. Okay. Here we have to draw, in fact, complete a flowchart, and the question says that the flowchart is actually an algorithm that is representing the input of 3 values and assigning them to 3 different variables. Output the largest value to the variable answer, output the message saying the largest value and the average of all 3 numeric values, and then they are taken in no particular order. Okay, this is a very simple question. So you have 3 numbers, you just have to output the largest value. So you can clearly see you'll be outputting the largest value here, and here you'll be calculating the average. So maybe let's start from the first one. So first of all, let's say we have num1. Let's say if I have 90, I have 10, and I have 50, 500. How do I know 500 is largest? First I compared 500 with 90. Is 500 greater than 90? And then I also compared 500 with 10. If both of them are true, then that means the value is the larger value. So we have to do that for all the variables. So we check if num1 is greater than num2 and num1 is greater than num3, like this. If that is the case, then we simply say that the answer would be set to num1. Okay, if num1 is not the largest value, then we can look for the second number to be the largest. That could be the case. So if num2 is greater than num1 and num2 should be greater than num3. If that is the case, then that means we are going to set the answer to num2. And if none of these conditions are true, it simply means that the third number would be the largest value. Okay, once we have all the largest value defined, the question says you now have to find.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir,
okay, we have to find the average now. So we do not have a variable for average, and they've not specified as well. So we can just call it anything. Let's call it AVG. AVG is set to num1 plus num2 plus num3 divided by 3. Okay, now very common mistake that people do in the exam is that they end up writing fractions here. Okay, they will write something like this, just like you do in a maths paper. So please don't do this mistake here. You are not allowed to use fractions. So just avoid them. Just use brackets and simple mathematical operators like we do normally. And then we output the average. So it would be output average of 3 numbers, comma, AVG, and that's it. With this we get 5 marks. So again, fairly simple question. Okay, then this is a bit tricky question. So the question says a different part of the program contains an algorithm represented by the following program flowchart. So we have the start and then we have the end here. Okay, and here we have to basically convert this flowchart into pseudocode. Okay, now this is going to be a bit of a tricky question. Right, I'll open the marking examiner report for this as well. It's paper 2-2. June 2024, question number. Okay, here we go. A small number of very good answers were seen, but very many less focused approaches which struggle to capture any element of the given flowchart. Many solutions lacked any nested structure. Okay, so this was a poorly attempted question. Now, how do we make sure that we do it properly? Okay, if you read the question, so this is the shape for a module call. So which could be a function or a procedure, and since we are setting a value that is being returned by the module, so this obviously makes it a function. So I'll just call it a function call. Then we're checking is flag equal to true. If it is yes, then we go to the end of the program. Otherwise, we will set the port to 1 and we check if it is equal to 4 yet. If not, then we keep on repeating this part. Okay, the reason this question is particularly difficult is because students are not able to identify how many loops there are in this program, okay? And you should be able to figure out this. Whenever there is an arrow going back, this is a loop, okay? So this is a loop. Similarly, you also see the arrow going back here as well. So this is another loop. So this should give you a very major hint that this is a nested loop program, okay? There is supposed to be a loop within a loop. Now what we'll do is, let's say if I were to use repeat until, so first of all, when does the program end? This is the deciding condition that should the program continue or not, and that is flag equal to true yet, right? So I'll go to the collab file and I'll be writing the codes there. So we're doing question 2 right now. Okay, so the ending condition here is flag equal to true, right? This is the most crucial condition. So this should be the condition for our repeat until as well. Repeat until flag is equal to true. You don't really need to write is equal to true, that is implied, or you can do it if you want to. All right, as long as that is not the case. So the first thing we're doing is we're calling getStat and we're storing it into flag. So inside the repeat until, I'm saying getStat and I'm going to store it in flag like this. Then I'm checking is flag equal to true. Okay, so that is already being checked by the condition of the loop. So I'll just go ahead and check if that is not the case. Okay, so I'll write if flag is equal to false, then what do we do in that case? Okay, in that case I'm setting port to 1. Okay, now look at this. This again is a nested loop here, right? And what is happening is that we are setting the port to 1 initially, and then we're incrementing it by 1 every time, and then we are checking if it is equal to 4 yet. The number of iterations are known and we are incrementing the iteration by 1 every time. So this is a very simple case of a for loop, right? So again, you just have to catch it. You are setting it to 1, you are incrementing it by 1, and you are checking if it is equal to 4. So this is literally a for loop. And at the 4th iteration, when it becomes yes, so we restart. So that means we are.
What does reset port do?
What does reset port do? This part. So we are just
Yeah.
giving it an initial value of 1.
No,
And
reset port. It says call reset port.
where is it for? Okay, this is just some module. This is just a procedure call. We don't know what it is doing and we don't need to know. They just asked us to convert this into the pseudocode.
Okay.
This is incomplete code, okay? So yeah, plus this set port to 1 is happening only once. It's not happening over and over again. So that means we're setting it to 1 and then we're looping it for multiple times. And since we are stopping the condition at 4, that means we are going to loop it 3 times. So this is just simply a for loop for port 1, 2, 3. Okay, if you don't want to use a for loop here, you can use another while loop here or a repeat until here. It's up to you. But I'm just keeping it as simple as possible. Next port. Okay, now inside the loop, this is the part that is happening inside the loop. We are calling reset port. So we are writing call reset. Port is the parameter here, reset is the procedure, and we are setting port is equal to port plus 1, which will already happen in the next port. And then we do end if, and then we just stop. So this is as simple as the program could be. But again, if you read the examiner report, they're saying that this was a very poorly attempted question. Now, what were the mistakes? They were unterminated clauses, as in end ifs and nexts, and they were not completed the loops. Interleave rather than the nested clauses. That means that nesting was not properly done, so loop within a loop. Use of jumps to exit a pseudocode like break and end procedure. Okay, so like I keep on reminding you, break is not allowed in pseudocode, so please don't use it. Incorrect use of getStat function, including call getStat flag. Okay, why is that not going to work? Because you are assigning getStat to a variable, and when that happens, that means it's basically returning a value. And when a value is being returned, that means it's going to be a function. And then flag, this arrow is wrong, right? It's always going to be right to left. Otherwise, this will cost you marks. So please keep these mistakes in your mind. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we have correctly attempted it. If you don't want to use for loop here, you can just use another repeat until here. Okay, it's not that simple. Sorry, not that tough. So you can just write, you just set port to 1 here, and you use repeat, and you use until port becomes equal to what is the condition, equal to 4, and then you increment the value of port by 1 every time. Port is equal to port plus 4. Totally up to you. So I leave it as it is. Okay, so we're done with this. Then we move on to the next question. Hopefully we got all the marks. Okay, question 3. A factory needs a program to help manage its production of items. Data will be stored about each item. The data will be held in a record structure of type component. Okay, so we'll be using a record data type. Whenever they tell you that you have to use a record structure, that means you have to use the ADT record. Okay, the programmer started to define the fields that will be needed as shown in the table. So you have some fields, you have some comments. They are saying write a pseudocode to declare the record structure of type component. Okay, so in order to do that, you need to use the syntax of the record data structure. And to do that, I'm assuming you guys remember the pseudocode guide, as I always mention. So let me open that. Okay, this document, it's already part of the drive folder as well. And if we go into the record part of it, so this is how we're supposed to define the record. So you have type, then you have the student record, then you have all the elements, and then you have their types. And then if you want to access any of them, you have to use the dot notation. Okay, how does that work? I'll show that. So this is question number 3, part A. Okay, here we go. So we have to declare component. So we'll write type, then we write component, and then we do end type. Okay, so this is again the pseudocode syntax given to us. If you deviate from here, you will lose marks. Okay, this is fixed. You must write it as it is. So we have declare, and then you have to declare all of these. So I'll just do item number and reject. So item number and declare reject. Okay, item number will be of type, this is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, so it should be an integer, and this is clearly a boolean. So this should be an integer, should be a boolean, and then remaining you guys can do on your own. So you just need to know the correct data type. So this is a character, and then this is a real, this is also a real. So you get 4 easy marks here. Then the question says you need to convert it. In fact, you need to initialize an array of 2000 elements that will be of type component. Okay, so now you have a record. So we know that in simple 1D arrays, we just store the values like this. We just have singular values, right? But in case of a record, what you can do is you can store multiple values here. So you can store the item number here on the same index, and you'll have the reject, and you'll have all the other data like state and etc. Now, how do we access this? We need to use the dot notation. We'll say that array index 1. So let's, whatever the name of the array is, let's say data index 1 dot item number. So this will give you the value of item number. Then data index 1 dot reject. This will give you the value of reject, so on and so forth. So going back to the question. Okay, so they're saying write pseudocode to declare the item array. So in order to do that, I'll just write declare. So we have to follow the same syntax. We write the name of the item, which is item, then we write array, then we have colon, then we have the number of values, which in our case is, I believe, 2000, of type. So this is not going to be a string, integer, real. It's not a primitive type. It should be a component, which is the one that we made here right above. We get 2 marks for this. Okay, state 3 benefits, so I'm skipping this. All right, then we are at question 4. Okay, question 4 is very simple. So question 4 is one of those questions which seems a bit difficult when you first read it, but it's actually fairly simple. You just have to comprehend it properly. And these questions are designed to be in such a way that they confuse you intentionally. So there's a right angle triangle. A triangle has three sides A, B, C, and A is the length of the longest side. Okay, so this is just extra info. A triangle is said to be right angle triangled if it follows the Pythagoras theorem. And then a procedure will be written to check whether three lengths represent a right angle triangle. The lengths will be input in any sequence. Okay, nowhere it says that you have to check if any side is the longest. Okay, this has no connection here. So sometimes they always give you some extra data to confuse you. There is a procedure that will prompt three integer values of three lengths. Test whether the three lengths correspond to the sides of a right angle triangle. Output a suitable message. The length of the side may not be the first value input. Again, length of the longest side has nothing to do here. So what you have to do is, there could be a case where A is let's say the longest side, so it will be A square is equal to B square plus C square. Or there could be a case where B is the lengthiest side, so it should be something like this. Or there could be a case where C is the lengthiest side, and then it should be something like this. If you get this part, then that is literally the answer. You just have to check for all the values that whichever is corresponding to the function given to us, which is A square is equal to B square plus C square. Either it could be A or B, or it could be C. And if you go into the example,
Sir, how do you know which side will be the longest?
You don't need to know that. They're just saying that it would not be the first value input, but it would be the one which would be on the left side of your equal. So this is if A is the longest side, then it would be A squared. If B is the longest side, then B squared, then otherwise C squared. But again, this data is not really relevant. Okay, so question 4.
So,
Most candidate, yeah.
so to check whether it is right angle, we just use Pythagoras,
Yes, we just have to apply it on all the sides, A, B, and C.
Interesting.
Yep. So most candidates manage to gain at least 2 marks available for this question. They include the basic building blocks. Common mistakes were they were passing parameters, they were omitting the prompt before the input. Okay, so you see, omitting the prompt means you need to output a message before you take an input. You cannot directly write input, let's say length of side. This is wrong. You must always output a prompt message. Okay, then using X rather than the star sign as a multiplication, and omitting keywords and if from the clause which selects between the two possible outputs of statements. And then doing something like this, using AND to actually concatenate two statements, which can never be done. Okay, AND is only used to return you true and false between different conditions. Okay, now how do we do this? So again, very simple question. First, you are going to create a procedure. It's called isRA. So procedure is right angle, and then we must always end the procedure. You should be in the habit of just ending the procedure at the end of the space, so you don't forget it afterwards, because you lose 1 mark for this. So let's have three sides. Let's call them integers, and let's output the prompt. Input lengths for sides A, B, C, and then we'll input all of them at once. Input A, B, and C like this. Okay, now in order to check that if the triangle is right angled or not, we just have to check for all the combinations. So let's go for all the combinations. Let's check if, let's call it, when A is the largest side, let's call it maybe LGA. Okay, so it could be largest A, so it could be B square, or you can also write it this way, B square plus C square. Or if B is the largest side, then A square plus B square. Or if C is the largest side, then A square plus C square, like this. And now we just have to compare. If the largest side is equal to, yes, so if a is the larger side, then it should be equal to a square, right? This could be one condition. Or if b is the largest side, then it should be equal to b square. Or if c is the largest side, then it should be equal to c square. If any of these are true, then you are just going to output triangle is right angled. Otherwise, you will just output triangle is not right angled, and then you end if. That's literally it. This was the whole question. And you get how many marks for this? You get 5 marks for this. And like you saw in the exam report, this was not well attempted. Some of the candidates got uh, mixed number of marks. So what did I do? I just found the values of the right side of the Pythagoras theorem, and then I compared it with the left side for all the sides, and if in any of these cases the condition is true, then that means that the triangle is right angled. That's it. So this was question 4. Then we move on to question number 5. Okay, question 5 is a simple error detection question. So a program is being designed in pseudocode. It contains a global one-day array data of type string containing 200 elements. That means that the global here means that there would be some initialized values. So we don't have to input the values here in this case. The first element has the index value 1. Process is written to initialize the values in the array. Okay, so we have the procedure process, and then okay, so the question says there are 2 syntax errors and 1 other error. So syntax error, you guys remember, is simply an error in the way the code is written, and it violates the grammatical rules of the program language. Okay, so what are the errors here? So let's see. We have index set to 0. This error is fine. Input is fine. Okay, look at this. While and next. So this is first error. So this should be, you can say that in next index, and the correction should be that replace it with and while. Okay, then let's look at the second error. So there is a case of, okay, then there is an otherwise, and then there is an end case, looks good, then output completed and index and times. Okay, there must be an error here. If you look at the value of index is set to an integer, right? And here we're trying to concatenate an integer with a string. Now, if you were not confirmed about this, just go to the insert document and look at the end. Concatenates 2 strings or more, right? So here we are trying to concatenate string with an integer, which is wrong. It would only work if you had wrapped this inside num to string. So this would be the second syntax error. So we'll say that and index, and the correction would be that and can only join string values, not integer. Okay, and then the question says there is an other error. Okay, now the question specifically said here that the index value is set to 1, right? And if you look at the loop, so index value is set to 0 here. Okay, and then we are inputting the value at index 0. Okay, this is wrong because there is no index 0. They've literally said that the first index has to start from 1, which means that we'll have something like this. Something like this, index 1, index 2, index 3. So if it is starting from 0, then this is wrong. Just a second. so as I was saying, yes, so here we have the index set to 1. So if we go to 0, that is an invalid index. So that should be the right answer. So we'll write that the other answer is that we are trying to access index 0, which is out of bounds or which is simply just not defined. The procedure contains a statement that is not needed. Identify the statement that is not needed. Okay, so there's an extra statement here. Okay, let's see. So we have a while loop, index, case of. Okay, so we have either 0 and 1. Okay, it says otherwise output alarm 1201. Okay, whenever we do a modulus of a value by 2, it's not possible for us to get any other value except 0 or 1 when we do mod of a number by 2. So that is the error, because the otherwise clause would never be triggered. The otherwise statement, and it would never be triggered as mod by 2 can't have values other than 0 or 1. So these are those little application questions that are a bit tricky as well. Okay, question 6, we'll come to this in a bit. Let's see if there are any other. Okay, so this is a theoretical question. I'm skipping this. Alright, so this is a very simple state diagram question. We can quickly do this and then we can go back to pseudocode. So we have inputs, then we have outputs. The question says you have to complete the table to show the inputs, outputs, and the next states. Assume that the current state for each row is given by the next state. If no output, then output cell should contain none. Okay, this is free marks essentially. So let's quickly get done with this. We're starting from input A, and then from S1 we go to input A and we go to S3. All right, now we're at S3, and if the input is W, so output is W. So if we are at S3 and output is W, so then the only possibility is that input should be A. So this should be input A. I'm just copy pasting it from above, and then since it's a loop, so we should remain on S3. So we remain on S3. Then in the next part they're saying that the output is none, so that means it should only have an input. So at S3 there is only one state that has an input, which is input B, and that is input B. I'm just writing the short form, and from input B we go to state 2, so I'll just write S2. Then at state 2 they're saying that you will get input B. At state 2, where do I get input B? Not B. Okay, this is input B. So from state 2 I get input B, I go to state 5. So at state 2 I go to state 5, and then there is no output, so I'll just write none here. Then input A at state 2 is this. It takes me to state 4, so I'll just write state 4, and the output is here going to be output is, I think I made a mistake. So S5 input B, this should be S2. Okay, this should be S2. My bad. This should be S2, and we get an input A here, and we go to A, and then there is no output, so this is also none. And then finally at S4 we have output X, input A. So I'll just write input A and then output X. That's it. And then the question is saying identify the input sequence that will cause a minimum number of changes from S1 to S4. Okay, S1 to S4, so we go from, we get input A or we get input B. So we have to go from S1 to S4. So if we take input B and if we take input A, so we go in 2 hops. If we go from input A, then we take input B, then we go input A. Okay, so this is more number of hops. So the shorter would be going to input B to S2 and then going to input A. So we'll just write the input statements here as they've said. So it should be input B followed by input A. Very simple question, free marks. Okay, now in fact I'll go back to that question in a bit. Let's do the easier part first, as you should be doing in the paper as well. If you think some question will take a lot of your time, you should do it towards the end so you can do the other questions quicker. Alright, so we have question 8. A teacher is designing a program to process pseudocode projects written by the students. Each student project is stored in a text file. The process is split into stages. Okay, then at every stage we have a new file, s1.txt, then at s2 we have s2.txt, and the source file is the original file produced by Michael. Alright, so just a reason, okay, I'm skipping this. So delete spaces called with the parameter of type string representing a line of pseudocode returns the line after removing any leading spaces. Okay, so leading spaces are the spaces in the start, not in between, not towards the end. Okay, this is a very simple question. So what we have to do here is, let's say if I am representing spaces by dash, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then let's say if I have some message while x is less than 0. So what we have to do is we essentially have to loop until non-space character, or loop until not equal to space, like this, right? And we just keep on counting how many characters we encountered. So we keep on counting how many spaces we encountered, so keep counting number of spaces, and then at the end we just have to get rid of them. So, and then we have to just trim that many spaces from the start. And in order to do this, you can either use the mid function or you can use the right function, right? You cannot use the left function because we have spaces on the left side. So let's see how we can do this. Not too tough and not too easy. It's a very balanced question. So let's try this. This is question number 8. Question number 8. So as always, please make sure you have the end function written. Otherwise you lose 1 mark for this. Alright, so we'll leave space for declarations at the start and we'll do it towards the end. Now what we have to do is we simply have to count the number of spaces in the start, and then we have to just get that many characters out of the way in order to remove the leading spaces. So the question says we are called with a parameter of type string representing a line, and then you have to return the line after leading spaces. Okay, so we just start. So what we do here is, first of all, we have to count how many spaces there are in our string. So like this example that I wrote here, we have to loop until we see how many spaces there are. Okay, so I'll use the repeat until. Repeat until, let's say, character is not equal to space, and we'll declare it as a constant. Declare space as a constant, and we're just saving it once so we don't have to rewrite it over and over again. And we should just write constant, because when we have constants here we don't need to write declare here, so it should be constant. Okay, like something like this. Alright, repeat until character is not equal to space. Okay, as long as it is not equal to space, we need to keep a track of the space count. So let's call it space count, which is set to 0 initially. Okay, and then how do I get one character at a time? So in order to get one character at a time, we simply have to use the mid function. So I'll say character is equal to mid, the source is line, and then we need to get one character at a time. So if I write 1, 1, that simply means that I'll be extracting the first space all the time, okay? But I need to go to the second space, then third, then fourth, then fifth, then sixth, then seventh, then eighth, then ninth, then 10. So we just have to change this. So if I just copy paste this code, and if I make it 1, 2, then 3, then 4, so I need to change these every time. And in order to do this, I can simply just use some sort of a counter here, right? I can just make it, let's say, I, and then I can increment the value of I by 1 like this, which will make sure that we keep on going to the next character one by one and one character at a time. So we get the character and then we check if the character is equal to, is let's say not equal to space, because we're checking the condition at the end, then we should just increment the count. Space count is equal to space count plus 1 and if, like this. So what am I doing here is I'm getting a character, one character at a time from the string. So it should be space, 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 W, H, I, L, E, etc. It will get one character from the whole string at a time, and the loop keeps on going until space character is, in fact this should be equal to space. So as soon, sorry, my bad, it should be not equal to space, until character is not equal to space, which means that the loop would stop as soon as I get the W or any other character than a space. So I'm checking here, if the character is not equal to space, then I need to increment the space count by 1. And by the time the loop has ended, I would have gotten exactly how many spaces there are. In this case, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 spaces here, then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So there are a total of 17 characters in the string. How do I get the remaining number of characters outside the spaces? I just subtract them both, and then I get this many characters from the right side, right? So that is what I have to do. Now I have the space count here. I can just get the number of characters. Okay, so let's call it line. So let's call it updated line. Updated line is equal to right of line.
Sir,
Yes.
the if condition, shouldn't it be that the character is equal to space then?
Which one?
Yes, this line.
Oh,
Shouldn't
yes,
it
yes,
be equal
yes,
to?
yes. Thank you. If character is equal to space, yes. Then space count plus 1. Okay, so updated line would be to get this many characters from the right side. Okay, how do I calculate this? So the total length is 17 and the number of characters of spaces are 7. So 17 minus 7 would give me 10, which is the number of spaces that are, the number of characters that are non-leading spaces, that are not leading spaces. Okay, so that is what I have to do. I'll simply do length of line minus the space count, or we can do it separately and assign it into a new variables. We can say non-spaces, something like this. So it would be the total length of the string, which is in our case 17, and then the space count, which in our case is 7. So 17 minus 7 is 10. So that this gives us the exact number of characters after the spaces start. So I'll just write non-space, and we have to return this. So I'll just return updated line, and that's it. Now we have to declare all the variables that we have used here in order to get full credit. So declare space count is an integer, then we have non-spaces as an integer. Okay, then we have declare character would be a character, and then yes, it would be a character, and then we have declare updated line, which is a string. Okay, so we have to make sure that we declare all the variables that we have used, and now this is perfectly done, right? Okay, so part A is done. This is, I'm hoping, 6 marks. Okay, then we have, okay, so part B, and now we are at part C. Two models are defined. Okay, so two models are defined and they're already, okay, this is a helper function. Okay, the question says that it's already done for you, so you just have to use this. This is a helper function or a model called with the parameter of type string representing a line of pseudocode from, and then returns the line after removing any comment. Okay, so we saw that before. Delete spaces, and then this is a delete comment which will remove some comment. Okay, then stage 2, called with two parameters, an input name and output name, copies each line from the input file to the existing output file, having first removed all leading spaces and the comments, does not write blank lines. Okay, this is a lot of words. So the best way to do this would be to visualize it. As I always say, you must visualize the problems to understand them properly. So this is part B, part C in fact. Okay, delete comment is already written for you. So delete comment, we are assuming this will return a line without comments. And how would the comment look like? Something like this. If x is greater than 0, and then there would be a comment. This is let's say a condition. So the output of this delete comment would be if x is greater than 0. Okay, so there wouldn't be any comment here after we call delete comment. This is just to show you. Okay, then they're saying you have the stage 2, which is going to copy each line from the input file. Okay, let's make an input file again just for example. So let's say we have an input file here. Okay, so we have an input file. Let's say I'll just copy paste it here. Right? Okay, now what should the output file look like? They're saying in the output file, we are going to copy while having first removed all the leading spaces and the comments from that line. Okay, so let's say I have some leading spaces here. Now the output file would look something like this. It would be all of this, but there wouldn't be any leading spaces, so it would get rid of the leading spaces, and then there wouldn't be any comments like this. So this is how the output file is supposed to look like. This is the input and this is the output file. And does not write blank lines to the output file. Okay, so let's say if I have blank lines here like this, so maybe this is the end of the input file, so it's not supposed to write any of these blank lines into the output file as it's already done. And then outputs a file message to tell how many blank lines were removed. Okay, so there are multiple problems in. So let's start doing this question. This is part C. Now what we have to do here is, first of all, we have to write the procedure or the function. So this is called stage 2 and it's outputting a value, so we don't need to make it a function. So let's call it procedure stage 2. This would be an end procedure. Okay, so representing an input file name and an output file name. So there are two parameters. Let's call it input and then let's call it out. And don't call them input or output because those are the reserved keywords. Okay, then we have to copy each line from input file to the existing file. Okay, so we have to open file input for read and then open file output for write. Again, all of this pseudocode syntax is being taken from the pseudocode guide, which is you guys have it. Okay, so we're opening the files and we have to close them as well. Close file input, close file output. If you miss out on any of these, you will lose one mark. Then you have to copy each line. Okay, so first of all, you have to read all of the lines in the input file. So for that, we have to use the while not end of file of input, right? So we have to read the whole file, all the lines in the file. So again, you can assume that this is the input file with all these these lines one by one. So we're going to read all of them. So I'll write read file and then let's say I'll store it in data. So read file input in data. So that means the first line would be this delete comment, then if x is greater than 0, then output of delete comment. If x is greater than 0, then blank line, blank line, blank line. It will read all of these one by one. Now I want that first remove all the leading spaces and the comments. Okay, to remove the leading spaces, we already have written delete spaces. Now in a question like this, even if you did not write the correct code for this in the previous part, you will still get full credit if you used it properly. Okay? So we can just call delete spaces here. We'll say delete spaces and we'll call it on data because data is the current line that we have. Okay, so let's say if I read this line and if I send it into delete spaces, so I'm assuming or I'm expecting it will return me something like this without the spaces in the start, without leading spaces. So I'll save it in a variable because it's returning a value. Let's call it updated data, or yeah, let's call it update data. Okay. or let's call it no spaces, like this. And then the question says that you have to use the delete comment on this as well. So let's call it no comments, and then the function name is delete comment, comments I believe with an S. Okay, it's a singular. So delete comment, and I apply it on no spaces. Okay, again, what happened here, I sent in this line, or let's say I read this line and I send it into my function. So first it will remove the leading spaces, so it becomes if x is greater than 0, and then the second part, after it has removed the spaces in this string, I need to send this string into delete comment, so that this comment here, this is a condition, is also gone, so our code looks perfectly like this. So from line 3, and it should look like exactly like line 15. So this is a two-step thing. Okay, so we do that here, and then copy each line from the to the existing outer file, having first removed. Okay, so we've removed that. Now we have to first check that if it is a blank line or not. Okay, so in order to do that, let's check if it is a blank line or not. In fact, we can just check it here. If data is not equal to blank, like this, right? Only then we will apply all of this. Otherwise, we will simply count the blank lines. Blank count is equal to blank count plus 1 and if, because the question says that you have to give the number of blank lines that were removed. So we are not going to write the blank lines, but we are going to count how many of them were blank. Okay, so we get no spaces, we get no comments, and now we have to write this into our output file. So write file, and then I write output comma no comments. So with this, I am assuming that this line here would look exactly like this and would be written into my output file. And with this done, I can simply just go back and do the same thing over and over again until I've read all the files, and then eventually I end up closing the files and hoping that the program has worked correctly, right? And we'll have some sort of a counter here, so this would be blank count, which is set to 0, and then I have to
Sir,
output.
so we're just blanking out the files, right?
Yes, Musa,
We're blanking out the files.
we are just counting how many number of blank lines were in the file, in the input file.
Okay, was Trump in those black lines, by the way?
Sorry, what are you saying? Repeat.
Was Trump in?
Okay, so we write into the file, and yes, blank out was set to 0, and we output at the end count of blanks removed, comma blank count, like this. Now we have to do declaration, so I'll do that quickly. Declare. So we have blank count, which is an integer. Then we have declare data, which is a string. Then we have all these extra variables we made, like no spaces, no comments, and that's it. So with this, we are done with the whole part here as well. All right, so now we are left with the last question. That is a bit difficult question, but I'm hoping we can quickly get done with it. Okay, we won't do the part B. This is all theoretical. You guys can figure it out. Okay, now what is this question? Bit scary, but hopefully we'll be able to solve it. So in this question, we have a music player that will store some track name, and up to 16 characters can be displayed on the screen, and anything that is longer than 16 will need to be trimmed as follows. Words must be removed from the end of the track until the resulting title is less than 14 characters. When a word is removed, the space in front of that word is also removed. 3 dots are added to the end of the last word displayed when one or more words have been removed. You have to write a function trim that will take a string representing the title, and you return the string to be displayed. Assume the word and the title are separated by a single character. The first word of written title is less than 14, and then there are no spaces before the first word or after the last word in the title. Okay, So keeping all of this in mind, what we have to do is, let's say if we have this song here, Bohemian Symphony, we have to count up to 16 characters. Now anything that will be longer than 16 characters will be trimmed, and then the trimmed characters must be less than 14. So let's count. So we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16. Okay, this is 17th character. So what we do is we have to trim essentially the whole word, and once we have trimmed the whole word, we just need to recheck if it still is, if it is less than 16 or not, or up to 16 or not. If it is not, then you need to trim another word, and every time you trim a word, you need to replace it by 3 dots. Bad autofill is not trimmed because it has 15 characters, so they're saying up to 16, so 16 or less. Bohemian was trimmed, then Paper Book Writer again exactly 16, and then Chris Sings the Blues has more than 16 characters. So what we do is first we get rid of the blues, and then let's count how many characters it has. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15, right? So they're saying the resulting title should be less than 14 characters. Since it was not less than 14 characters, so what we did was we trimmed another word here, which was D. So it becomes Chris Sings, and then we replace it by 3 dots. So this is what we have to do. Okay, now what in the most simple logic of this program would be that as long as the number of characters are 14 or more, we will keep on trimming the values until there is a space, right? That is the simplest logic. And if we look at the marking exam report for this, for question 6, we'll realize this was a tough question. Like I said before, a challenging pseudocode question attracted a wide range of different answers from virtually no attempts to fully working solutions. And they weaker were only using one loop, so it must be a nested loop, and they lacked different keywords, and then the solutions use a count control loop, could still be word send marks, so you had to use a conditional loop. Common mistakes were end of clause, using length as an identifier, plus to concatenate, and treating a string as an array. An innovative solution of working back from string index 14 was seen on few occasions and often gained full marks. Okay, so you could have done it in many different ways. It would have been up to you. Yeah, so they're talking about working back from the index 14. So what you can do is you start from index 14 and you can work your way back if you have more than 16 characters. So you directly trim that many characters from the right side, and if it is still doesn't reach a space, so you can cut more over and over again. Okay, then let's try to do this. This is question number 6. Okay, so this is called trim. So we write function trim, and let's call it title of the song would be a string, and it will return a string, and then we have end function. Okay, so now the first thing that we have to do is that while the length of the title is greater than equal to 14, okay, so the question says that if the resulting title is not less than 14, then you need to trim again. So while that is the case, we need to trim the values, right? So this would be the basic rubric of our question. While this is the case, we will keep on removing the values, and then we have to basically, let's call it updated title, or just use the same title. Title is equal to title, and we'll concatenate some 3 dots here, dot, and we have to return the title. So in case you were not able to solve it in the paper, or if you get a question like this that you blank out on, so you can just write partial solution like this to get some marks at least. Then if there is up to 16 characters, so if there is any string that is already less than 16 characters or equal to, then that means it doesn't need trimming, so you just return the name as it is. So if length of the title is less than equal to 16, then we are going to return the title and we do end if. Right, so the main part of our program is pretty much done. Now we just need to figure out a way in order to trim the values in between. So if the length was less than equal to 16, we return. Otherwise, if it is greater than equal to 14, then we need to keep on trimming the values, and at the end we just concatenate the dots. Okay, now in order to actually remove the characters, what we need to do is we need to keep on counting until we find a space, and when we find the space, we just get rid of that many characters, right? So in order to do that, we need to use the left function, because we are removing the values from the left side. So if there was Bohemian Symphony, so we counted until it is still greater than equal to 14, so we look for a space and we remove that many characters. So this is where the part happens. Okay, so let's call it title is equal to left of title, and then let's keep on let's keep on reducing the characters by 1. Okay, so we have Bohemian Symphony, let's reduce it by 1, and then 2, then 3, then 4. So every time we reduce the character, we also need to make a check that whether it has hit a space or not, right? So there's one check, or there's one loop to ensure that they are at least if it is more than 14 characters or not, and then there is another loop that is essentially looking for this process until we find this space here. So we're looking for the space, so this must be inside some sort of another loop. Here we can use either repeat until, or we can use a while loop. In fact, we can convert this whole into a repeat until. I'll just do that, repeat, and we'll just bring it down until the length becomes less than 14. Alright, so until that happens, we keep on trimming the value. Okay, now in order to trim the value, we will use another loop here. I'm leaving this. Okay, so another repeat, and then this should be indented inside until. Okay, now this is the loop. The inner loop would keep on working until we actually end up finding a space that we're looking for. So here we are looking for one character at a time. So NOHPMYS. So we will be getting one character at a time from the right side, and we keep on reducing the characters like this until we hit the space like this. So we're just removing the characters. So this should be until right of title by 1 is equal to space like this. Alright, so what I'm doing is I am just checking if we find a space, and every time I'm just reducing one character at a time. Okay, so again let's look at it on the other example. So I'm removing R, then E, then T, then I, then R, then W until I hit the space. Now as soon as I hit the space, I'm going to check is the length still less than 14 or not. If it is not, then I'm going to repeat the same thing. I'll keep on removing the characters until I hit the space, and then I check it again, so on and so forth. Right?
Sir, but won't the title then also contain the space at the end when we're counting the length? तो उसमें end पे space भी तो count होगी.
Which space are you talking about?
In the loop, इसमें आपने लिखा है ना कि length of the title is less than 14, but इस less than 14 में जो space है at the right side वो भी तो count होगी.
Space on the right side. एक second, let me see. अच्छा, अभी हमने ये वाला पार्ट तो पूरा नहीं किया. सो लेफ्ट साइड से जब हम नेम एक्सट्रैक्ट करें, एक सेकंड, लेट मी फिनिश दिस. सो व्हाट वी नीड टू डू इज कि जो भी आपकी करंट लेंथ है आपके नेम की, उसमें से आपने वन कैरेक्टर एक्सट्रैक्ट कर देना. सो दिस इज द होल लेंथ, एंड देन लेफ्ट साइड से आपने सिर्फ ग्रीन होम एलाबामा जैसे. सो यू Yes, you get rid of A first time, then you get rid of M next time, then you get rid of B next time. So इस तरह से आपने characters को हर दफ़ा trim करते जाना है. So this would be length of title, और इसमें से हम हर दफ़ा एक जो है वो subtract करते जाएंगे, and then this would keep us getting one character from the side. And then we keep on doing this until we hit a space from the right side. Okay, I think this makes sense. जी रामीन, बताओ question वहाँ से.
सर जो एंड पे जो स्पेस है वो भी तो फिर हमारे टाइटल में इंक्लूडेड होगी, राइट? जो हमारा बना है.
नहीं, we're not. एंड वाली स्पेस कौन सी यहाँ पे एग्जांपल में मुझे बताओ, which example are you
तो जो
referring to?
हमने कोड लिखा है उसमें ये है ना कि अंटिल जो राइट है उस पे स्पेस है, तो जब हम लेंथ ऑफ द टाइटल कर रहे हैं तो उसमें स्पेस भी तो इंक्लूड होगी.
Title space. Yes, so what are you suggesting we do?
So like is that still fine because less than 14 including the space?
Until right of title by 1 is equal to space. Yes, that is fine because we are backtracking until we hit the space. So अगर जैसे हम यहाँ से देखो ना, ये remove कर रहे हैं character by character 1 2 3 4 5, and when I hit the space, okay, so you're saying कि ये space भी count होगी, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I got it. So हाँ ठीक है. So we need to remove the space at the end as well. Okay, so यहाँ तक अभी तक हमने क्या किया? We are just getting the title, we are getting the characters from the left side, and we are trimming the value until we find the space, and we keep on repeating this until the length of it becomes less than 14. So yes, so you're perfectly right. अब इस पे जो last space है, we need to remove that as well. So title से पहले यहाँ पे हम left लगा लेते हैं, और लेफ्ट में we will do length of title -1. Make sense now? So यहाँ पे जो भी आप
Shouldn't we do it before we're like shouldn't we do it वहाँ पे जहाँ पे until length of title is less than 14 लिखा है?
नहीं,
या फिर
it's
does it
fine.
not
आप
matter?
नहीं, अब आप वहाँ पे कर लो या यहाँ पे कर लो, it's the same thing. So doing here it would be much better. It would keep the logic simple. So if I have this string here, let's say Bohemian Symphony, and you're saying there's a space like this, so we are just getting rid of it here. So you do it above, you do it now, it's the same thing. So we're just getting rid of it, and then we are adding the 3 dots at the end, and we're returning the title.
Okay.
So that's it. We are done with the paper.